The movie starts with showing Lee Jung Do, and he liked doing adrenaline-rushing activities. He was good at judo, kendo and taekwondo. In fact, he was so good at 3 of them. Apart from doing sports, Jung Do also played video games with his 3 best friends, each of whom had a unique nickname, namely Moisture, Kang and Earthworm. Even Jung Do have his own nickname, Diarrhea. Even though he spent a lot of time doing what he liked, Jung Do never forgot to help his father deliver food from his family restaurant to their customers. Jung Do was also very kind and humble to everyone he met. Even the owner of the hair salon he frequently visited, Sun Young, liked how polite and kind Jung Do was to her. After delivering the order to Sun Young that day, Jung Do intended to go straight to his friend's place to continue their game. But in the middle of his journey, he saw a probation officer named Minjo being attacked by a probationer. Because the probationer wanted to kill Minjo, Jung Do ended up having to intervene. Due to his unintentional heroic actions, Jung Do ended up receiving an award from the Supervision Division. Because he was considered a hero who had done good for society, the officer of the division, Sun Min, was very grateful to Jung Do for his action because Minjo might have lost his life if Jung Do didn't help. Sun Min then told Jung Do about how their job as a probation officer. They were tasked to monitor probationers. Sometimes the people they monitored caused problems, so they had to always be prepared 24 hours a day in case the worst happened. Officers like him, who didn't have the strength to fight, were paired with people who were younger and stronger called self-defense officers. Sun Min then asked about Jung Do's job and what activities he often did. Jung Do said that he was just a delivery man and a judo, taekwondo and kendo athlete. Hearing that, Sun Min looked so happy and he made an offer to him to become a temporary self-defense officer to replace Minjo for 5 weeks. Sun Min said that there were very few supervisors serving as self-defense officers, so they were in dire need of them. Sun Min dared to make such an offer because Minjo had spoken directly to him about how strong Jung Do was and how tough he was in paralyzing the probationers who attacked him. All the requirements to become a self-defense officer were already within Jung Do, so Sun Min begged him to be a temporary officer in Minjo's place. Jung Do asked if this job was fun because for him, as long as it was fun, he would be ready to do it. It seemed that Jung Do was still a little unsure about the work he would do. Therefore, he asked his 3 friends about it. Kang was very supportive because this work was very suitable for Jung Do, who liked physical activities. But Moisture and Earthworm suggested that Jung Do refuse the job, because the job would quickly bore him and he wouldn't have time with them. Didn't get a clear answer from his 3 friends, so Jung Do asked his father about it. His father said that he would be very happy if he accepted the job and asked him not to worry about their shop because he was still able to manage it alone. As the days passed, Jung Do finally accepted the job as a temporary probation officer. He was warmly welcomed by the officers there and was taught about how to use their program on the monitor. The green icon was the probationers who they kept an eye on. The color of the icon would turn yellow when the bracelet battery reached 30%, and when it happened, they had to contact them and persuade them to charge the bracelet. If they refused the request, then they were required to meet the probationers immediately. Time passed and Jung Do seemed bored with his job because for hours he just sat in front of the computer without doing anything. But suddenly, after waiting for a long time, one of the icons of a probationer named Yang Ho turned yellow. Jung Do immediately did what he was told. He got very annoyed because Yang Ho repeatedly ignored his calls. He then told Sun Min that Yang Ho had hung up on him twice. Hearing this, Sun Min invited him to immediately go to Yang Ho's residence. Before leaving, Jung Do was provided with the equipment for field officers. He was told to turn on the body cam before they started, and he could use a stun gun for self-defense. During their journey to the location, Sun Min said that in the past Yang Ho had committed a crime by raping underage women and had been sentenced to 4 years in prison. They finally arrived at Yang Ho's residence. But Jung Do, who often passed by that area while he was delivering food, asked Sun Min to go in alone through the front door, because he suspected that the window, which had no iron bars, was Yang Ho's house, which had been deliberately prepared for him to jump. So, he would be on guard outside the building. Meanwhile, Yang Ho was trying to rape a girl, which made her scream for help. Sun Min, who heard this, tried to break through the door. According to Jung Do's expectations, Yang Ho tried to escape through the window of the house. Jung Do looked very happy because he finally had the time for action. He paralyzed Yang Ho, who was trying to escape. Sun Min gave him appreciation because he managed to complete his first job very well, and that made Jung Do even more enthusiastic. The next day, Jung Do got a warning that probationer named Jung In was outside his probation area. When he got there, Jung Do looked very angry because Jung In hadn't changed at all. He was still stalking children. Jung Do was so angry that he intended to beat him up. Before Sun Min came to stop him, he apologized because he couldn't control his emotions. However, Sun Min said that what he was doing was cool. He wanted to treat him to thank him. Jung Do refused the invitation because he already had a plan with his friends, but if his boss allowed him to invite his 3 friends then he would accept it. Sun Min then agreed to treat Jung Do's friends too. When the 2 of them arrived at the restaurant, Jung Do's 3 friends welcomed the 2 of them and began to introduce themselves. While eating, Kang asked Sun Min why he chose a job like this and instead of being a police officer, which in terms of salary and status was better. Sun Min told him that when he was 10 he had a serious car accident that caused depression for him, but when the thought of despair filled his mind the police appeared to save him. He actually wanted to become a policeman, who could also do good to all the people who needed his help. But because of the accident the growth of his left leg was slower than his right leg, causing it to be shorter and hindering him from being a policeman. He still tried to be useful to society. So when there was a job vacancy to be a probation officer, he tried hard to be one of them because he wanted to create a safe world. At the probation office, young Ben, one of the probation officers, was working the night shift, when he got a notification that a probationer's bracelet only had 30% battery left and he couldn't call his cell phone. When he was about to go to that man's location, he got another notification alerting another probationer named Di Wong. So, he called Sun Min to immediately come to Di Wong's location. Because they had received 2 notifications from different places, hearing the news, Sun Min invited Jung Do to immediately go to Di Wong's location. With the help of his 3 friends using a car owned by Moisture, when they got there, Sun Min and Jung Do got a notification with a red icon indicating that the ankle bracelet had been removed by Di Wong, making it very difficult for them to find the exact location of Di Wong. Fortunately, Moisture brought a drone, so he helped them down Di Wong's whereabouts. After finding Di Wong, Jung Do asked them to stay there while he followed Di Wong with their instructions. Di Wong, on the other hand, was breaking down the door of his friend's house. He was very angry and wanted to kill his friend because his friend kept making fun of him because of the ankle bracelet on his leg. Jung Do tried to stop him, followed by resistance by Di Wong. Thinking everything was under control, Jung Do was shocked when Di Wong stabbed his neck trying to end his life. Sun Min then tried to guide Jung Do with his words, so that Di Wong would not dare to do such crazy things through Jung Do. Sun Min said that bad things happen to everyone, but he shouldn't end it all over. The 20 years of prison he had gone through would be in vain. He would help with the report so Di Wong wouldn't receive another sentence, so he asked him to put down the cutter and hold on a little longer. The day when he would be free would soon come, and until that time comes he would be by his side. After hearing that Di Wong finally let go of the cutter, after that incident, Jung Do returned to his house feeling happy, because he did expect his colleague to be very kind. His father, who saw that, felt happy too. He asked Jung Do to take a shower, then he could enjoy the apples that he had prepared. At that moment his father saw the news on television about a recidivist named Ki Young, who would soon be released from prison after serving a 20-year sentence on charges of sexual crimes against 15 children under the age of 13. News about Ki Young's release became a serious discussion in the probation office because his release from prison would definitely cause distress in the area where he lived. The chief wanted Ki Young to get strict supervision from them, but he was also aware of the limitations of their members and the government's very small budget for them. Therefore, they had to find a way for them to get strict supervision for Ki Young without burdening the division. Before Jung Do left for work that morning, he stopped by Sun Jung's salon to get his haircut. After that he walked to the office. When he passed near a restaurant, he saw a man he met at Sun Jung's salon teasing the waitress with an ankle bracelet on his leg. Jung Do seemed to have a bad feeling and then rushed to his office to see who the man was. He then found out that he was Gum Nam, a former sexual offender. Feeling there was something strange about this person, Jung Do told Sun Min, hearing that Sun Min tried to call Gum Nam's cell phone. However, it seemed that Jung Do's suspicion was right. So, the 2 of them immediately headed for the location where Gum Nam was. But on their way to the location, Gum Nam's ankle bracelet lost its signal, which of course made them both even more panicked about the possibility of what might happen. Arriving at the restaurant, Sun Min then asked about Gum Nam, the waitress. There said that she didn't know where the man went, but what was certain was that before the man left he asked her to come with him to his house. 2 of them then split up to look for Gum Nam. Before they separated, Sun Min said that sexual criminals tend to look for a place with only one worker. After a while of looking for Gum Nam in his reverie, Jung Do remembered that Gum Nam stopped by Sun Jung's salon earlier that day. His hunch was right, because at Sun Jung's salon Gum Nam was trying to rape Sun Jung. Sun Jung tried to fight back and screamed as loud as she could for help, but she had no power against Gum Nam. She could surrender to what Gum Nam would do to her. But luckily Jung Do arrived there and immediately broke the glass door to save her. He wanted to beat Gum Nam, but remembering their standard protocol and how Sun Min's kindness in dealing with the probationers, he decided to just strangle Gum Nam to paralyze him. In the morning when Jung Do came home, his father had been waiting for him with breakfast that he had prepared. His father said that Sun Young just stopped by to thank Jung Do and praised his actions for saving her. His father then told him that he was very happy to see people happy because of his hard work. His father then told him that if there was something that made him happy, he had to fight for it. At the probation office, the manager conveyed good information that the head office had approved a budget to recruit 2 more self-defense officers. The head office was also going to send 2 supervisors for Ki Young's special supervision team, but he failed to ask for additional personnel to watch him out. Thinking that out of the 15 sexual crimes committed by Ki Young, 14 of them were committed during school hours, so, the most important thing for them was supervision during the day. Immediately after the meeting, they met Jung Do, who seemed to be waiting outside the meeting room. He suddenly told Sun Min that he wanted to work as a permanent employee in the division. Hearing this made Sun Min very happy because with him he felt like he was invincible. After officially becoming one of the permanent probation officers in the supervision division, Jung Do accompanied Sun Min to pick up Ki Young on the day of his release. Ki Young looked like a cruel psychopath and didn't care about the situation around him. His escort back to his residence had to use a lot of police because many people had been waiting for his arrival to throw him out of their area. In the evening, Ki Young's acquaintance from prison Byung-soon came to his residence to welcome him. Byung-soon asked him to go up to the top of the building where he lived, to just smoke and discuss the work they were going to do. He told him not to worry about the ankle bracelet because if it was still in the same building or 10 meters away from the building, it wouldn't trigger the system. The next day, when monitoring Ki Young, Jung Do saw that Ki Young's green icon started moving. He then asked for permission from Sun Min so he could follow where Ki Young went to avoid an incident that might happen. Jung Do managed to follow where Ki Young went, but because Ki Young entered a shopping mall, he lost track of him. It turned out that Ki Young was in the parking lot of the building to meet someone in a black car, who was going to invite him to work with him. That person was Min Wook, who offered him to make adult videos with children which he would distribute on the dark web for a fee of 10 million won per 10 minutes. He would look for the children for the video, so Ki Young didn't need to bother thinking about this. Jung Do, who was still looking for Ki Young's whereabouts, arrived at the parking lot. He tried to approach Min Wook's car there, however, because the glass was dark he couldn't see anything inside. But he remembered the car's plate number, finding a dead end. Sun Min tried to help him by calling where Ki Young was to confirm his location. Ki Young, who knew that he was being followed, answered the call and said that he was at a restaurant. So as not to arouse suspicion, Jung Do immediately confirmed his whereabouts, which made them both believe that Ki Young was really at the restaurant. When Jung Do arrived at the office, he thought hard about what Ki Young was planning. Both he and Sun Min suspected that Ki Young was trying to trick them. Shortly after, Minjo showed up at the office after 5 weeks of being treated in the hospital. Minjo thanked Jung Do for helping him and saving his life. Knowing that Jung Do had become a permanent probation officer, he gave him a pair of tactical gloves as a gift, which might be useful for him when he was on duty. At nightfall near Ki Young's house, a girl was seen walking alone to her house. When a small dog distracted her, suddenly a man came from behind and kidnapped her. Somewhere else, Byung-soon met Yang Ho to invite him to work with him. Ki Young and Byung-soon were in the basement of Ki Young's apartment. They decided to use that location as a place for them to shoot their videos. This way they didn't need to worry about being suspected by the probation officers because they didn't leave the building. When Minjo was on duty at night, he found that Yang Ho was outside the area where he was supposed to be. He immediately informed Sun Min about it. Moreover, he also confirmed that Yang Ho's phone was not active. Knowing that information, Sun Min called Jung Do, who was seen monitoring Ki Young, telling him that he would look for Yang Ho's whereabouts with Minjo, so he couldn't assist him from the office. Jung Do, Sun Min and Minjo each carried out their duties to track down the people they were monitoring. In the cold rain, Jung Do followed Ki Young to an empty abandoned building. Meanwhile, Sun Min and Minjo were at the waste paper collector to look for Yang Ho's whereabouts. Just a few moments after they entered, they both heard the voice of a woman screaming for help. They ran towards the source of the sound only to find there was a trap that had been prepared for them. On the other hand, Jung Do was also trapped by Ki Young, who locked him inside a garage filled with dozens of thugs preparing to finish him off. Sun Min and Minjo tried to run from there, knowing they were outnumbered and might not be able to handle it. Minjo tried to put up a fight because he saw Sun Min being continuously beaten on the head using a baseball bat by Yang Ho. On the other hand, even though Jung Do lied overwhelmed when facing the thugs alone, he was able to finish them off. Unfortunately, the contrary happened to Sun Min and Minjo. Though Sun Min only suffered a broken neck, Minjo had to die in this incident. Later, Jung Do ran to Ki Young's residence to confront him, but when he arrived there he couldn't find him. He then saw that the basement porch was wet, thinking that Ki Young might be there. It turned out that his suspicions were true because Ki Young and Byung-soon were there shooting a video with the little girl they had kidnapped. After breaking through the trellis, Jung Do entered the place, and it turned out that Ki Young and Byung-soon were already waiting for him. While fighting Ki Young, Byung-soon came and stabbed Jung Do, but even with that stab wound he was still able to beat both Ki Young and Byung-soon. Thinking he had taken control of the situation, Jung Do approached the little girl to calm her down. But suddenly Ki-young approached and stabbed him from behind. Byung soon tried to escape from there after hearing the police siren, but Ki-young remained there and fought the two officers. The two officers couldn't catch Byung Soon and Ki-young, who managed to escape, but at least they were both able to save the little girl and Jung Do, who was losing blood due to being stabbed in the stomach twice. Jung Do's father, who knew that his son was in a serious condition, immediately went to the hospital to see how his son was doing. He was very angry with the supervision managers because the injuries suffered by his son were major. Jung Do tried to calm his father by saying that the injury was not fatal. Jung Do instead asked where Sun Min were and whether Ki-young been caught or not. One of the officers, Dong Han, said that Ki-young managed to escape after he took off the ankle bracelet on his leg, while Sun Min was undergoing surgery for a broken neck. Sadly, Minjo had to die after experiencing cardiac arrest. Several months after the incident, Jung Do had finally recovered. He met the little girl's aunt, who thanked him for saving her niece, even though she was still very traumatized by the incident. The woman told him that when she told the little girl about him, she seemed to have the strength to survive. Jung Do then went to Sun Min's room to see him. He then told Sun Min about the little girl he saved. Sun Min then told him that Ki-young had a secret hideout that even the police couldn't find. He realized how Jung Do felt, but he didn't want him to get hurt again. So, he told Jung Do to just let the police handle the rest. Jung Do to talk to his three friends. He told them that if the police couldn't catch Ki-young, then they as civilians had the right to help. He remembered the black car parked in the basement that he found when he followed Ki-young. He then asked Moisture to track the plate number down with the help of his brother, who was a hacker, while the others gathered all the things they needed to find where Ki-young was. After some preparations, Jung Do and his three friends found Min Wook's house and visited him to get information. Moisture tried to break the door lock, and although he failed, a broken lock lured Min Wook out of the house, making it easier for them to enter the house. With the help of his older brother, Moisture tried to hack into the computer there, and after opening it, Moisture's brother was shocked because the contents were hundreds of video files of underage children that had been shot by Min Wook. This made Jung Do so angry that he lost control. His friends tried to prevent him from attacking Min Wook, only to accidentally make him poke Min Wook in the eye with the stun gun. Earthworm took advantage of the situation by saying that he would call a medic if Min Wook said where Ki-young was. Minute Wook, who was scared that the wound in his eye would turn into permanent blindness, finally said that he had a credit card connected to the illegal account that he gave to Ki-young. If Ki-young used it, there would be a notification on his phone showing where the card was used. Four of them immediately planned to catch Ki-young after finding his location. The area marked in red was where he used his card in the past 2 weeks. There were several ends, which might be one of the places where he stayed. They then prepared themselves for their ambush, but when they were about to leave, Jung Do's father, who was still very traumatized after seeing his son being stabbed, forbade them to go. Jung Do said that 3 months ago he didn't know anything about the ankle bracelet or the probation officers. But then he managed to save a little girl even though she had to suffer from trauma. There might be another child who was scared and waiting for him to save them, and so that he wouldn't regret everything, he had to catch Ki-young. He promised to look after himself. His father finally gave up and let him go. Arriving at the location, they prepared their equip to look for Ki-young. They split up so that they could quickly find him. After looking for a while, they still couldn't find him, until Moisture found one ant with some plates and shoes in front of it. When Jung Do took a few steps into the inn, he heard Byung Soon's voice calling Ki-young. After making sure that Ki-young and his group were in there, Jung Do asked his three friends to wait for him in the car, while he went inside to finish his business with Ki-young. Ki-young and his gang came out after hearing Jung Do calling his name. Jung Do tried to beat them one by one, and after successfully defeating them, he ran after Ki-young, who escaped from there. He managed to find Ki-young, who was just standing there silently waiting for him. Jung Do was overwhelmed by Ki-young, but then Moisture sacrificed his drone to save Jung Do, who was in danger. The long struggle was finally done, not only managing to defeat Ki-young, but Jung Do also succeeded in catching him, so he could serve his sentence again in prison. After the incident, Jung Do and his three friends got an award from the president for their services and bravery in arresting Ki-young. The little girl Jung Do saved before was also seen attending the event. She was no longer afraid to come out of her house. Sun Min, who had recovered from the injuries, was also there. He looked happy to see the four of them. And movie ends here.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.